Alright guys, it's Bach time. This is Weekly Piano. And this is a little sub-lesson for TJ, one of my students. So he's asking me to take something small but tricky of Bach's that I can't play and discuss my approach to take. Not just playing slow, but how I'd think I might position my hands, fingers, arms, to follow more of the fingering, more of your thought process and problem solving. It's good to have smart students. I like it. Good questions. Maybe carry that over into how you would use that information in transcribing a solo in the same way. Okay, so when I learn Bach, I go by something that Lawrence Hobgood, he's another great pianist. I took a lesson from him when I was 21, and he showed me one thing that that he learned from this, I can't remember who, but it was a master instructor at University of Illinois, yeah, there's another sub-question in what you just asked, TJ, by the way, but I may or may not get to it. Anyways, this technique that Lawrence showed me is something hugely valuable, and I know you said not just playing slow, but it requires playing slow, first of all, and not everybody's going to have the time to do this, but this is how I learned Bach, and how you should learn Bach. You have to start crazy slowly and follow this. I mean, you don't have to, but this is what I do. And you follow this one particular technique. You position your wrist over the center of the key. So your wrist is there, and the key is there. And you look at the fingering on the chart, because they'll generally give you the right fingering. There's a lot of study that goes into what the fingering should be, so I would just get those from the chart, rather than do the study yourself. So position your finger and let it drop with your arm. Just a very, very slight drop, like your hand's falling. Now, 99% of you will not do this, but I'm going to tell you how to do it anyway. Then you position your wrist over the next one. Maybe like scooch back a little bit. Lift up, position your wrist over the next one. Lift up. And it's not actually over it. Obviously my wrist is over here and I'm not going to go like this. But like as far as you can comfortably go, just so the weight goes from your arm, from your shoulder and your back through your arm the most efficiently possible. And I'm reading the music. I would normally be doing this with a metronome. And forget about the second voice now. This is the first fugue. Make sure you have that fingering right. That's all I start with. That one line, pick a conclusive point, and now go back. Do it again. Even if you did it perfectly, just do it again. And pay attention to it. Pay attention to your hand. Oh, my fingering was wrong there. So let's start over and do it again. Was that fingering right? On the sheet music, it's kind of hard to tell. It wasn't. Make sure you're doing the correct fingering. This is the third bar, the first two notes. That's all. And then I would do it again and again and again, very, very slowly, until you don't need to look at the sheet music. You have it perfectly memorized, and you're doing it effortlessly. Don't speed it up. Don't do this piece fast until you have it all completely down. Then speed it up. So like take a week, take 2 weeks, 3 weeks if you need it. And that's if you're practicing every day, to get it slowly under your fingers. Now I'm gonna check out the upper voice. This is halfway through measure 2, or at the pickup to measure 3. Position the wrist as closely as possible without having tension and weird angles. Position again. Position again. Again. And again. Just check that fingering there. Yeah, it's 5, 3, 2, 4, 1. 5, 1, 4. That's all. That's all you need. Just do that one measure, because the left hand, you're going to have to get that measure too, and there are more voices that come in. So now get that perfectly. Now keep doing that. I've started to learn this piece before a long time ago, so it's a tiny bit under my fingers, but not really. So I can speed it up now, but I don't think I'm even going to, because you really don't need to. Like, you should go through the whole piece before you speed it up. So now let's look at that measure, the left hand. You had this this is third measure. Yeah, that's right. But I think that's actually played with the right hand. So keep it. So now when you get that enough in your fingers and it's memorized, then you put the two together. It's not perfectly in time, that's okay. And then it goes on from there. But now that you have that, and granted what I did was not in time, but I still should have done it more consistently. So I would spend the entire day just focusing on those 3 measures until you get it perfectly, and then you can do it kind of at a moderate tempo. From there. I actually don't remember enough to continue, but that's my process. And that what I just did, even doing it that fast, spend hours on this before you do it that fast. If you spend like, I mean, I've spent an hour on a measure before. I've spent 3 hours on a measure before if it's a hard measure. So the amount of time that you put in doesn't matter as long as what you the hand is completely relaxed, and that's why you're putting, when you start it, you're putting your wrist over whatever note it is that you're playing, and you're just letting the weight of your arm fall, so your finger never goes flat straight like that. It's always nice and curved and just super 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 relaxed. I mean, and that's what you do for jazz too. There was another, TJ, you had a question at the end of this about how this would go into transcribing a solo. It's a little different than transcribing a solo. I think the method that you use to learn a measure of Bach is the same method that you use to learn your favorite line of a solo that you're transcribing. Because like when I'm transcribing anything, when I'm transcribing any solo, it's much more of it's less of a meditative process and more of just an exciting sort of like challenge, and there's more tension involved. But when I find the line that I will like the best out of it, that is when I'll break it down and I'll do it super super slowly and make sure I can play it completely relaxed and do that in every key. And when you do that, that's like learning a measure of Bach, because you have to do it perfectly relaxed, but for a different reason, because in Bach you're dealing with like 4 different voices in your hands that are all counterpoints, and if you have tension, you'll kill yourself. You'll break your muscles. Your tendons will become completely locked up if you try to play Bach with tension. That's why that's why jazz players who come and start playing classical and Bach, they'll like start to get these pains in their hands, because it's so much more likely to have tension in your hand when you're trying to execute 4 voices at once. And in jazz, you're often just executing 1 and then comping. So I hope that kind of answers your question. It's a different nature, but what you do to memorize your favorite line is what you do for every single note and measure of Bach. Yeah, and building a line with inner movement and complex inner voices, like that's cool. That's a totally different lesson. I'll give you a tiny little preview. Like, I mean, if I were playing like Autumn Leaves, that I'm like taking this upper line and then I'm making a counterpoint, or and that's kind of reminiscent of Bach, because it's you're moving it in sixths as far as your goal note, because you're kind of circling around that. Now it's a 6th down, 6th down, and that's something you hear in Bach all the time. And some players do that a lot. Keith Jarrett does it. Of course, Keith has played the entire Bach catalog. Brad Meldau does it, and you can do it, and it creates this great variety of interest when you're playing. Like, because I'm not doing it great, but you get what I mean. Because also when you jump, your mind picks up a different line. Like if I go, the mind immediately hears a melody, but it also hears two separate lines that could be. And when you do that, when you jump around like that, your mind is putting together the lines of the closest notes. So you're hearing these different lines like you would in something like Bach, where if you were actually like. That's like a tiny taste of what I could do for a bigger lesson, but I'd probably have to learn more Bach first, which I'm going to do now that TJ is learning it, because I sort of have to. I can't not know what my students know. That's a lie. You guys know a lot more than me in some ways. Anyway, love you guys. Peace.